Hopefullness 2.0, October 31st, 2023. I gotta plug in. Hopefully it'll stay there. Got me my first jar ever of molasses. Unsulfured, which I don't really know what that means. But the difference between brown sugar and sugar is molasses. So if you want brown sugar in a recipe, you can just add some of this. It's super thick, obviously. Did you know that elephants love molasses? Grandma's is a proud supporter of the Elephant Sanctuary in Tennessee. Cool. I wonder if there's actually some negative connotation involved in that. You know, kind of like how this brand is a Nestle brand. This is literally the only malted milk powder that was available at the store. Nestle Milo. At least the first ingredient is sugar. It's malted barley and tapioca starch, which is pretty much what you're after when it comes. I mean, just malted barley would be good. But Hopefullness doesn't have a lot of options. They definitely have a lot of junk food options. These are all things that I've been wanting for like the last week. Mint Oreos, which, you know, are assholes about their whole Oreos thing, because Hydrox doesn't even seem to exist on the shelves, even though it should. Get some water. It's right here. I didn't realize that. But you can put malted milk powder in a lot of stuff. It says this chocolate malt beverage mix. You can put it in like ice cream and all kinds of stuff. I'm going to try some brownies, some homemade brownies, because I have pretty much everything I need at this point. Because I've got the oil, I've got the flour, I've got the malted milk powder, which is part of the new brownie recipe that I'm looking at. I got some chocolate chips, got the cocoa powder, sugar, eggs, vanilla, although I probably should have got another one of those because that's almost done, but it's whatever. But yeah, the reason I'm making this video at almost 11:30 at night on Halloween is that it's been 2 years since I moved over here. Not this specific spot, just on the other side is all. But I've been moved out of the last place for 2 years, and I now have a job again. I've got, one from... It's, so I don't know if I mentioned it in the last one. I probably did, but it's doing work from home, marketing, editing stuff, and so, yeah. It is kind of a drain because, like, even after 3 hours, I'm, like, tired. And so, like, today I didn't even work. Normally I would, but tomorrow morning I've got to get up pretty early, so I've got to be taking a shower soon. And get up around like 6:30, 6:45 so that I can be ready to have a 7 a.m. Zoom meeting. And then I've got another meeting. 9:30 a.m. So I'll work between those. And then, and it's mostly just kind of like a follow-up. Because, like, so far what I feel like is, like, while I'm doing the work, it kind of feels like I'm working. But so far the work culture feels less about, like, sort of corporatocracy, if you will, and it feels more collaborative, which is good. I just don't get a chance to have, like, that face-to-face thing that I prefer. But it's whatever. This job, it's the best paying job I've ever had, so I can't bitch. And it'll pay the rent with a little bit to spare. And speaking of a little bit to spare, today I spent, or yesterday actually, I had gotten a notification from Steam about a game on my wish list called Abzu. I'm sure it means something. I could have just looked this up beforehand, but whatever. But it's an underwater game, and the reason I got it is because I suffer from that sort of underwater fear called thalassophobia, or thalassophobia, or however the hell you want to pronounce it. Doesn't matter to me. I'm sure there's a correct way, and it doesn't matter. I'm kind of taking the John Green approach to correct pronunciations. Nobody knows for sure. Because all words are made up, doesn't really matter. And it's, kind of like the fear of the open ocean and the deep, dark. And there were times when I'm playing it and I'm like, take a breath, realize I'm safe, say out loud that I'm safe. I'm like, it is not a game in which things happen to you. The things happen because of how you interact with them. And it was made by the same people who did Journey, Flow, and Flower. I haven't played Flow or Flower. I played Journey once. It's still a very impactful game. And it just so happens that Journey was on sale for like 50% off. So I'm like, fuck it, I'm buying it. Because it's a beautiful fucking game, and I really want to have that in my library, and I want to be able to play it again whenever the fuck I feel like it. So I downloaded it on the system because I'm like, I'll probably play it within a week. Because it's literally it's a gorgeous game. The character never says a word. But interestingly, you have a specific tone that you make. And that's the way that you can communicate kind of with the world around you. And as you collect certain collectibles, you have a scarf and it gets longer and longer and longer. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's based around you acquiring knowledge about the world you're in. And it's possible, while not always probable, but more highly probable right now since Journey's on sale, that through the internet connection, you will be able to run into somebody else and run through the game. And that's kind of part of it. And because you can't communicate through any other means other than like using just one button, you have to kind of like almost feel your way through with them. And again, just thinking about it, I mean, it's like, it's emotional. Like, it's a powerful game. And, I when I played it back when I was homeless. I was, staying with my girlfriend at the time. And in her dorm, her roommate had a PS3, which was the best thing at the time. And they had Journey, and so like one day I got a chance to play it, and I was just awestruck by how beautiful it was. It literally, it's the best game I've ever played. It really is. I've played it once, and I still remember it very fondly. I still have strong emotions when I think about it or when I talk about it. And so I'm like, fuck yeah, this game, I'm buying this game. Like, I was like, it's on sale? Hell yeah, I'm buying this shit. And it's like $7.50. I'm like, fuck yeah. So, and the reason I mentioned that is because, I have a little extra disposable income, not a ton. I can manage, I know how to manage tight earnings. I mean, I'm not going to save up much, but I've managed to pull it off before with roughly similar hours and pay and all that crap. But anyway. But I finished Abzu today. It was only a 4-hour game. And you can replay it, and there's elements to want to replay it because there's like various collectibles and other achievements that you can try to accomplish if you take your time and effort and all that. And I mean, I kind of took my time, but there was also like, there's times where you just let it sit. Like there's spots where you can like meditate in a spot and it'll, basically create a screensaver, and it's awesome. And it's just that chill vibe, and it's really cool. It's all underwater. There's There's a couple of spots where it's not entirely underwater, but that's like 1% of the game. Maybe 2. I don't know. But it's a great game. I had to kind of look into some of the imagery, so I went and looked at the synopsis for the game, or I went and looked at the Wikipedia of it. It talks about this sort of like ocean creation theory. It was like ancient Sumerian, and like they have a lot of sort of pictographs and what are called amphora, which are sort of like large vase, large clay vases with handles on the side of them. I've known that word since I first saw Disenchantment, which has become a disappointment. But I learned that word first through that show, and I was like, "What the fuck is amphora?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's what that amphora." Okay. So if you ever see like older clay, what look like large vases with giant handles on the side, those are amphora, and often they will have like imagery and some sort of pictograph around it. In the new God of War 2018, there's a scene where Kratos and Boy are in a room together, Atreus, and it's at Tyr's temple, and it's like a collection of stuff that Tyr has collected, across the worlds and the realms and the like. And you see amphora, which again is not a common thing across. I mean, in a way, it is for Earth. Like amphora and clay pottery, and the type of clay pottery is essential. Okay, you've heard of like the Iron Age or the Stone Age or the Bronze Age, and then we have the Industrial Age and stuff like that when it comes to what humans made and how it influenced the way that our world works. During the Stone Age, we definitely had a clay age where, if not the first, if not before the Stone Age, there was the clay age. Because clay pottery has been used and made for, time immemorial across humanity. Granted, the majority of it is in the Cradle of Life in Ethiopia. But, nevertheless, it's a common thing across the globe. But then it kind of just sort of peters off. We still make stuff like that, but we don't make it the same way. And we don't make it to the same kind of consistent quality. And by consistent quality, I mean like lack of quality. But with certain types of mechanisms of creation and stuff like that. If you watch Primitive Technology, for instance, he makes a lot of clay pottery. He makes a lot of clay tools of some kind, and it's usually some kind of container. And what he does is he makes a snake rope out of some kind of clay, and he stacks them and smooths them out, from the inside with his hands, because like he doesn't have a pottery wheel for throwing pottery and spinning and shit, and then digging his fingers and spreading it out on that crap. So he's got to basically build it as it is going to be, and that is, from my understanding of my very limited understanding of sort of the anthropology of humans, is that is a thing that has happened across the globe at the earliest stages of mankind throughout a pretty lengthy period. And like our early stages was the lengthiest. And then there became like agriculture, and agriculture helped expedite fucking everything. And then, post-agriculture, we were still doing post-agricultural, post-initialization, if you will, of the agrarian society. We're still an agrarian society, but we aren't to the point where everybody is involved in it. It's just that is the backbone of our society because we need it. We need it for food. We need it for, canned chipotles with adobo sauce. Or, pressed sugar so that all the molasses is excreted out of it and contained in the jar. Malted milk powder. Because you got to have your dry milk and your malt with barley malt and then your fucking, cinnamon, sugar, guar gum droplets. You got to have, agriculture helps produce all of those things. Because the thing that needs to occur first is the growing and then the cultivating and all that. And then we can do all the various processing. Like, we can have dried out fucking yeast. One thing I didn't think of when I was at the store, but they probably don't have it, is Vegemite, which is another kind of yeast. It's just a yeast extract that's more closely related to molasses in the way that it is provided. Because I've been, one of the things is I'm an adult, and adults start losing taste bud sensations. And because of that, tastes aren't as strong as they used to be. Let's stretch this leg out. It's starting to get on my nerves. Because this is the one that I hurt when I fell on my ass. Shit. So I'll buy more things that have stronger tastes because that's what adults with fading taste buds will do. That's why older people will go for like the stinky cheeses and shit. And that's why kids go for like the sweet shit and all that crap. But I'm also aware of like sort of the culinary aspects of things like malted barley and molasses and stuff like that. And yeast extract, and how those things they incorporate things like umami, for instance, into other things. And so I want to, like for instance, one thing I did when I made some cookies recently, I put some espresso powder in it because it helps to sort of amplify your chocolate. And it did. I put like maybe a quarter teaspoon in it, which I think might be too much. At least for the recipe that I'm using. So I'll just change it up next time. Actually, I think I did a tablespoon, or maybe half a tablespoon. I might just put a teaspoon in next time. I don't know. But, stuff like that, because I'm trying to learn the, culinary elements so that I can improve my cooking, because kind of need to in a lot of ways. Money, but also just, for the sheer sake of having variety in my life. And better tasting stuff. Like today, I had a 2-day brine. I had some chicken breast that had been brining for 2 days. It was supposed to only be a day, but I forgot about it yesterday, and so it's like, well, shit, I need to do it today. So I dried it out, put it in the skillet, threw on some olive oil, let it sizzle, and overcooked it because it holds a lot more moisture when it's brined, and there's molecular stuff that goes on with osmosis and a lot of other shit, and so it's going to take longer to cook a chicken breast properly. But then you want to go further anyway because of the whole chemical process that I'm still not sure of. And there was a video, actually, Adam Ragusia posted something about his turkey. And he was like, if you're going to brine a turkey, and I think that's where I got the idea, now that I remember. And so I was like, all right, let's do it. And it was fucking amazing. Holy shit, it was the most delicious bread. And okay, just to give you an idea, I use my rice cooker. I haven't done it while I've been here just because I don't think about it often. And also, I just don't have chicken breast on a regular because I prefer to have chicken thighs. The only reason I had chicken breast is because I had a whole ass chicken that I then butchered, in that I also butchered the butcher process. I just fucked that whole thing up. But it's whatever. And so I had, it's like I cooked most of it on my sheet tray, which I still need to clean. I'll just put that in the stuff today or tomorrow. Probably tomorrow. And then since I had some spare chicken left over, I cut up that chicken breast, and it was a big one, and I put it in the salt brine. It was only 1%, so it wasn't gonna get super salty, and it wasn't gonna like overwhelm it. But you also don't want to brine meat for too long. In a wet brine, at least. Maybe in a dry brine, it's kind of okay, because it'll start to pull that water out, pull that moisture out. But when you have a salt brine that's a wet, soak, it's going to stay wet for a while, but it also starts to break down and denature those proteins, and so it becomes more tender. And the one thing about breast meat, especially chicken breast meat, is that it can get real dry real easy when you cook it over the stove. I've had it happen multiple times. But this time I was like, I don't care. I will eat the paper that it cut, because like when you overcook chicken, and I did do a little bit of overcooking when it came to that bake. If you overcook especially white meat, it turns super papery because you've basically squeezed all of the moisture out. And so I seared it on here. I cooked it. I made sure it was cooked all the way through. And even while it'd been in there, it had been on there for so long, it still hadn't really gotten any color. And I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna let it sit. We're gonna get some color on it. It finally got a little color on one side. I was like, all right, cool. Flip it over to the other side, let it sit a little longer, and then flip it over again. Good color. Okay, we'll let that sit for like 5 minutes and then turn it off and let it sit in the pan for another 5 minutes. Now, that's an aluminum pan, so aluminum pans cool off a lot faster. They have much better thermal conductivity with the air, especially, and with the metal grates that they're sitting on. So that's one of the reasons why people are like, use like a cast iron or some heavy bottom thing or whatever, because that thing is going to hold heat longer. And so it's going to maintain evenness for longer. It's going to maintain not just the heat in of itself, but the heat throughout that pan is going to last longer. But I let it sit in the pan for another like 5 minutes. Came in, nice and brown, like not like even golden, but a little bit beyond golden, not like super duper. It should have gone longer, is what I'm after. I should have flipped it back over and like kept going for the other side, but it didn't. But it didn't matter because it was still fucking delicious. It was amazing. Like, knowing what I know now, what I would probably do is cut it up into smaller pieces so that I have more surface area to work with. Do the wet brine for at least a day. Then drain all that off, pat it dry with a paper towel, or sit it in the fridge for like another day. And then, because you want it dry, in order to get that coloring, you need it to be dry, because otherwise you're just cooking steam. You're just making steam, and the Maillard reaction is a higher temperature than water. So you need to get all the water off as quickly as possible. That's why they say, pat your steaks dry and all that kind of stuff, because the Maillard reaction is like 250 or 300 or something. I can't remember what it is, but you're denaturing proteins into simpler maybe disaccharides. I could be wrong, I don't know. But I think you're breaking it down into like simpler chemical components that are closer to sugar, and then you're cooking that at a higher temperature, which then caramelizes it. Because you can just take a pot and put sugar in it and let it sit there for like 30 minutes, and you will have caramel. Or caramel. Or caramel. I don't know what the fuck. Nobody knows how to pronounce it. And then if you do certain things with certain timing and certain heating and all that kind of stuff, and you can create, all kinds of different, variations of sugar based solely on, like, again, the temperature ranges and time and all that kind of stuff. But when you are trying to get that nice crust on there, you're caramelizing, and it's higher than 212, which is the boiling point. And so you have to try to get as much water off, because what will happen is it'll get in the way of the meat of the protein fibers that you're trying to cook hotter, and it won't. And apparently it has something to do with oxygen too, because like it doesn't happen to the inside of things. Like you're not gonna get caramelized, for instance, this is a wheat bread that I made. It's definitely had a lot of browning. It was already pretty brown in the first place, but it got even darker. It kind of, I feel like I've undercooked all of my loaves because it's still kind of gooey almost. Which is not a quality you want in your bread. I tried to overproof it. I've tried to underproof the damn thing, but I think it was just because of the makeup of because it's largely wheat bread, and maybe I did something different. I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So I've been trying to cook and try to cook better and try to cook more and incorporate one thing after the next or after the next or whatever. And so this is just a different ingredient. Same thing with the multi-milk powder. I'm actually going to attempt to make some cookies with some of these in it. I'm going to cut a good chunk of them in half. And then after the cookie dough is made and has sat in the fridge for a couple of days, because you want the butter to reharden, but it also sort of deepens the flavors. I'm sure there's some simple fermentation in there because of the sugars, and you've got wheat, which will have, or you have flour, which has a little bit of yeast in it, and that yeast, it's like, there's probably yeast from the background, but there's also yeast that's associated with the flour itself. And mixing with the flour, you're going to get a mild amount of fermentation, not like if you put 2 heaping spoonfuls of fucking yeast in there or something. But and with the brown butter, it also just tastes so much better. So brown the butter, make the dough, let it sit in the fridge for a couple of days. When it's time to start making cookies, then I can toss bits and pieces of these in there just to see if it's worthwhile. But it's about 15 till midnight, so I'm done. Have fun.